The rain fell like a curtain of silver needles over the deserted streets of South Boston, washing away the grime of another long night. The sky hung low and gray, caught in that liminal space between the darkness of night and the reluctant birth of dawn. Streetlights flickered against the wet pavement, creating pools of amber light that did little to pierce the pervasive gloom. Emma Rodriguez pulled her worn jacket tighter around her shoulders as she stepped out of Rosie's diner, the familiar jingle of the door chime fading behind her. Her feet ached in her old sneakers, the result of another double shift that had stretched from dinner service all the way through to the early morning breakfast crowd. Her dark hair, pulled back in a simple ponytail, was damp from the humidity that seemed to seep through everything in this city. "Night, Emma," called out Terry, the night cook, as he locked the back door behind them. "Get home safe, yeah?" "Always do," Emma replied with a tired smile, waving as Terry headed toward his truck in the opposite direction. She'd been walking these streets for 8 years now, ever since she'd arrived in Boston at 20, carrying nothing but a backpack and dreams that felt both impossibly distant and desperately necessary. The diner job was one of 2 she juggled, the other cleaning offices downtown 3 evenings a week. Every dollar went somewhere specific: rent for her tiny studio apartment in Dorchester, groceries bought on sale, the remaining balance on her community college student loans, and whatever she could send back home to her mother and younger sister in Monterey. The cafe she dreamed of opening someday felt like a fantasy some mornings, especially mornings like this when exhaustion made her bones feel heavy and her eyes burn. But Emma was nothing if not persistent. Her mother had always said she inherited her grandmother's stubbornness, the kind that bent but never broke. She took her usual shortcut through the alley between Harrison and Dover Street. The route shaved off 10 minutes from her walk home, and at this hour, every minute counted. The narrow passage was lined with dumpsters and fire escapes, the brick walls slick with rain and years of accumulated grime. Her footsteps echoed softly against the wet pavement. That's when she heard it. A sound so small and fragile that at first she thought it might be a cat. A thin, desperate crying that cut through the steady drumming of rain. Emma paused, her hand instinctively reaching for the phone in her pocket. The street had taught her caution, especially at this hour when the city belonged to shift workers, insomniacs, and people with nowhere else to go. The crying continued, more insistent now. 2 distinct voices, she realized with a start. Babies. Her heart lurched. Every instinct told her to keep walking, to call the police from a safe distance, to not get involved in something that could be dangerous. But even as these thoughts flickered through her mind, her feet were already moving toward the sound. 20 feet down the alley, partially hidden behind the industrial dumpster, she saw them. 2 infant car seats, the kind that snapped into strollers, sat tilted at awkward angles on the ground. Inside each seat, a baby, they couldn't have been more than 6 or 7 months old, wailed with the kind of desperate urgency that spoke of cold, fear, and abandonment. They were soaked through, their tiny fists waving in the air, faces red with exertion, and beside them, slumped against the brick wall like a broken puppet, was a man. Emma's breath caught in her throat. He was in his mid-30s, she guessed, with dark hair plastered to his forehead by rain and sweat. His expensive-looking suit, now torn and stained, marked him as someone from a very different world than hers. His white shirt was darkened with what could only be blood, though in the dim light she couldn't tell how much or from where. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallow and labored. For a moment, Emma stood frozen, her mind racing through possibilities. An accident? An attack? Should she run? But the baby's cries pulled at something deep and primal within her, the same instinct that had made her comfort her younger sister through thunderstorms and nightmares years ago. She knelt beside the infant seats, her hands trembling as she checked them over. Both babies were breathing normally, just cold and terrified. A boy and a girl, she thought, though it was hard to tell in their distress. They wore matching white onesies under tiny jackets that had done little to protect them from the rain. "Shh, shh, it's okay," Emma murmured softly in Spanish, her first language flowing more naturally in crisis. "You're safe now. I've got you." She turned her attention to the man, pressing 2 fingers against his neck as she'd learned in the basic first aid course she'd taken at the community center. His pulse was there, weak but steady. Relief flooded through her, even as new questions crowded her mind. With shaking hands, Emma pulled out her phone and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? I found someone in an alley. A man. He's hurt, unconscious, and there are 2 babies with him. They're crying, but they seem okay. We're on Dover Street, the alley between Harrison and— Stay on the line, ma'am. I'm dispatching emergency services now. Can you tell me if the man is breathing? Yes, he is. But he's bleeding and he's not waking up. Okay. Help is on the way. Are you safe? Is there anyone else around? Emma glanced around the empty alley, suddenly hyper-aware of how vulnerable she was. No, I don't see anyone, just— Please hurry. The babies are so cold. Ambulance is 3 minutes away. Stay where you are if it's safe to do so. Emma ended the call and immediately shrugged out of her jacket, despite the rain that soaked through her uniform instantly. She carefully lifted one of the babies from the car seat, the little girl she could see now, and tucked her against her chest, wrapping the jacket around both of them. The baby's crying softened to whimpers as warmth seeped back into her tiny body. There you go, pequeña, Emma whispered, gently rocking. There you go. With her free hand, she reached for the little boy, pulling his car seat closer and using her body to shield him from the rain. She hummed softly, an old lullaby her grandmother used to sing, letting the familiar melody calm her own racing heart as much as the baby's. The man stirred beside her, a low groan escaping his lips. Emma tensed, uncertain whether to be relieved or afraid. His eyes fluttered open. They were a striking gray-green, even clouded with pain and confusion. For a moment he simply stared at the sky, as if unable to process where he was or what had happened. Then his gaze found the babies, and something shifted in his expression, a raw, desperate fear that Emma recognized instantly. It was the look of a parent, terrified they've failed to protect their children. They're okay, Emma said quickly, her voice gentle but firm. The babies are okay. I called for help. Just stay still. His eyes moved to her face and she saw the effort it took for him to focus. Who? I was walking by. I heard them crying. Emma adjusted the baby girl in her arms. Don't try to talk. The ambulance is coming. Can't. Hospital. His voice was rough, strained with pain and something else. Urgency. Not safe. They'll find— Sir, you need medical attention. You're hurt. My babies. His hand moved weakly toward the car seats, and Emma saw his fingers trembling with the effort. Promise. Promise you won't. I won't leave them, Emma heard herself say, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. I promise. I'll make sure they're safe. Something in his expression relaxed slightly, though pain still etched lines around his eyes and mouth. Thank you, he whispered, and then his eyes closed again. The wail of sirens cut through the rain, growing closer. Emma felt a mixture of relief and apprehension as red and blue lights began to flash at the mouth of the alley. Within seconds, the narrow space was filled with people, paramedics, police officers, all moving with practiced efficiency. Ma'am, I need you to step back, a paramedic said gently, reaching for the baby in Emma's arms. She handed over the little girl reluctantly, watching as another paramedic checked over the boy. They worked quickly, professionally, loading the man onto a stretcher while asking Emma rapid-fire questions she barely knew how to answer. Do you know him? No, I just found them. Did you see what happened? No, I was walking home from work. Can you tell us exactly what you saw when you arrived? Emma recounted the story again for a police officer who introduced herself as Officer Chen, young, with kind eyes that reminded Emma of her sister. She wrote everything down in a small notebook while rain continued to fall around them, turning the pages slightly damp. You did the right thing calling us, Officer Chen said. Those babies are lucky you came along when you did. What's going to happen to them? Emma asked, watching as the paramedics secured the twins in special restraints in the ambulance. To the babies? They'll be checked out at the hospital. If we can't locate other family members right away, child services will get involved. Officer Chen's expression softened at Emma's obvious distress. Try not to worry. They're in good hands now. But Emma did worry, even as she gave her contact information and declined the officer's offer of a ride home, even as the ambulance pulled away with its precious cargo and the police began securing the scene. She couldn't shake the image of those two tiny faces, red with crying and cold. She couldn't stop thinking about the man's eyes, that desperate pleading look, and the promise she'd made to a stranger in an alley at dawn. Boston General Hospital, 6:15 a.m. Emma knew she should go home. She was soaked through, exhausted beyond measure, and had another shift starting at the cleaning service in just 12 hours. She needed to sleep, to eat something, to take care of herself. Instead, she found herself standing in the waiting room of Boston General Hospital's emergency department, her damp clothes leaving puddles on the linoleum floor. She'd followed the ambulance in her mind all the way through her walk home, had made it as far as her apartment building before turning around and catching the bus that would take her here. She couldn't explain it, even to herself. She'd made a promise, yes, but to an unconscious stranger who would likely never even know whether she kept it. The logical thing would be to go home, to trust the system to handle this situation as it handled countless others every day. But Emma had never been entirely logical, especially where children were concerned. The waiting room was the usual chaos of an urban hospital in the early morning, people holding ice packs to various injuries, a woman sleeping across 3 chairs, a man pacing while talking urgently on his phone in Mandarin. Emma found a seat near the windows and settled in to wait, though for what exactly she wasn't sure. An hour passed, then another. Emma dozed fitfully, her head resting against the wall, jerking awake every time someone entered or exited through the emergency department doors. The rain had finally stopped, and weak sunlight was beginning to filter through the clouds. Emma Rodriguez? She jumped to her feet, finding a doctor in scrubs standing near the reception desk. He was middle-aged, with tired eyes that suggested he was at the end of a long shift. Yes, that's me. I'm Dr. Harrison. I understand you're the one who found Mr. Kane and his children. Kane. So the man had a name. Yes, I wanted to make sure they were okay. The babies, especially. Dr. Harrison's expression softened. The twins are fine. Cold and upset, but unharmed. We're keeping them for observation for a few hours, but they should be able to be discharged later today. And their father? He has several broken ribs and some internal bruising, along with a concussion. He was very lucky. Another hour in that condition and cold and... The doctor trailed off, the implication clear. He's asking for you, actually. Says he wants to thank you properly. Emma's heart skipped. He's awake? Yes, though he should be resting. But he's been quite insistent. Room 237 if you'd like to go up. Just don't stay too long. He needs to heal. The hospital room was small and sterile, filled with the soft beeping of monitors and the antiseptic smell that all hospitals seem to share. Marcus Kane, she kept repeating the name in her head, trying to make it stick, lay in the bed with his torso wrapped in bandages, an IV drip connected to his arm. But his eyes were alert when she entered, tracking her movement as she hesitantly approached. You came, he said, and there was genuine surprise in his voice. I wanted to make sure the babies were okay, Emma replied, staying near the door. In the harsh fluorescent light, she could see him more clearly now. Strong features, a face that might have been handsome if not marked by pain, and something deeper, something that looked like grief. The doctor said they're fine. Thanks to you. He tried to shift in the bed and winced, pain flickering across his face. I'm Marcus. Emma. Emma. He repeated her name as if committing it to memory. I owe you more than I can ever repay. My children, Sophia and Lucas, they're everything to me. If you hadn't found them, anyone would have done the same thing, Emma said, though she wasn't entirely sure that was true. No. Marcus's voice was firm despite his weakness. Not everyone. Believe me, I know. An uncomfortable silence settled between them. Emma shifted her weight from one foot to the other, suddenly aware of how strange this situation was. Standing in a hospital room with a man she didn't know, who'd been left in an alley to die with his infant children. Questions crowded her mind, but something about his expression made her hesitate to ask them. The police were asking questions, Emma said finally. About what happened. What did you tell them? The truth, that I found you and called 911. I don't know anything else. Marcus nodded slowly, relief evident in his features. That's good. Thank you for that too. Mr. Kane. Marcus, please. Marcus, Emma continued. What happened to you? How did you end up in that alley with your babies? He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. When he spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. I made some bad decisions. Trusted people I shouldn't have. My wife, she died 3 months ago. Complications from childbirth that showed up later. The twins never got to really know their mother. His jaw clenched. And now there are people who think that with her gone, they can take what's mine. My business, my assets, everything I built. Your business, Emma repeated, certain there was more to that story. Import-export, Marcus said smoothly. Too smoothly. It's complicated. Family business, you could say, with all the drama that entails. His eyes met hers, and she saw a flicker of something there. A warning, perhaps, or an apology. The less you know, the better. For your own safety. Emma's stomach tightened. She'd grown up in neighborhoods where people minded their own business because asking too many questions could be dangerous. She recognized the signs of trouble, of the kind of life that existed in shadows and operated by rules different from those in the daylight world. "I should go," she said, already backing toward the door. "I'm glad you and the babies are okay." "Wait." Marcus's voice stopped her. "I need to know you're safe, that they haven't connected you to me beyond being a good Samaritan who called for help." "They? Who's they?" "The people who did this. If they think you know something, if they think you're important to me." He trailed off, frustration and fear warring in his expression. "I'm sorry. I never meant to drag anyone into this, especially not someone who only tried to help." "I'll be fine," Emma said with more confidence than she felt. "I'm nobody. I work at a diner and clean offices. There's nothing about me that would interest anyone." But even as she said it, she thought about the promise she'd made in that alley, about the way those two tiny babies had felt in her arms, trusting and helpless, about the look in Marcus Kane's eyes, a man who'd been betrayed and left for dead but whose first conscious thought had been for his children's safety. "Here." Marcus reached for the small bag of personal belongings on the side table, wincing with the movement. He pulled out a business card, plain white with just a phone number printed on it. "If anything happens, if you see anyone suspicious, if you feel unsafe at all, call this number. Someone will answer, day or night." Emma took the card, though every instinct told her to refuse it. "Is this really necessary?" "I hope not," Marcus said quietly. "But I won't take chances with someone who saved my children's lives. Please, just be careful. And if anyone asks questions about me, you tell them exactly what you told the police. Nothing more." Emma nodded and slipped the card into her pocket, feeling the weight of it like a talisman, or a curse. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her once more. "Emma, would you like to see them? Sophia and Lucas? They're down in the pediatric observation unit." She should say no. Should maintain distance, keep this as a random act of kindness and nothing more. But she found herself nodding, found herself following the nurse who Marcus called to escort her, found herself standing in front of two clear bassinets where two perfect babies slept, peaceful now in the warmth and safety of the hospital. The little girl, Sophia, had a tiny rosebud mouth and the longest eyelashes Emma had ever seen on an infant. The boy, Lucas, had one small fist pressed against his cheek, his expression serious even in sleep. They were beautiful, innocent, completely unaware of the complicated world they'd been born into. "They like you," the nurse said with a smile. "Mr. Kane said you were the one who found them. They're lucky to have you looking out for them." But as Emma stood there, watching those two tiny chests rise and fall with each breath, she didn't feel lucky. She felt caught, trapped between the impulse to help and the knowledge that sometimes kindness came with consequences you couldn't anticipate. 3 hours later, Emma's apartment. Emma's studio apartment was small, just one room that served as bedroom, living room, and kitchen, with a tiny bathroom barely large enough to turn around in. But it was hers, paid for with her own money, cleaned and organized to within an inch of its life. The walls were painted a cheerful yellow she'd done herself, and plants lined the windowsill, reaching toward what little sunlight made it between the buildings. She stood in the shower until the water ran cold, trying to wash away the tension that had settled into her shoulders. But even after she'd changed into clean clothes and made herself a cup of coffee, she couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted in her life. The business card sat on her small kitchen table, the numbers staring up at her like an accusation, or an invitation. Emma picked up her phone and called the one person she knew would listen without judgment. "Mija, ¿por qué me llamas tan temprano?" Her mother's voice, thick with sleep but instantly alert at the unexpected call. "I'm sorry, Mama. I know it's early there, I needed to hear your voice." "¿Qué pasó? Are you okay?" "I'm fine. I just had a strange night. I helped someone and now I'm worried I might have gotten myself into something complicated." Her mother was quiet for a moment. "Tell me." So Emma did, leaving out the parts that worried her most. The implications of danger, the sense that Marcus Kane was involved in something far beyond a simple family business dispute. She focused instead on the babies, on the desperation in a father's eyes, on the promise she'd made. "You did the right thing," her mother said firmly when Emma finished. "You helped children who needed you. That's never wrong, Mija, never. But what if there are consequences? What if there are always consequences to kindness? Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're difficult, but the alternative is to walk past suffering because we're afraid of being inconvenienced. That's not how I raised you." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. "I know, Mama. Now you rest. You've had a long night. Whatever comes next, you'll handle it. You're stronger than you think." After hanging up, Emma crawled into bed exhausted beyond measure. But sleep was elusive, her mind replaying the events of the morning on an endless loop, the sound of babies crying in the rain, the weight of Sophia in her arms, Marcus Kane's gray-green eyes filled with pain and desperate gratitude. She didn't know that at that very moment, in a luxury penthouse across the city, men in expensive suits were reviewing security camera footage from the alley. Didn't know that her face, grainy but recognizable, was being captured in screenshots and enhanced by sophisticated software. Didn't know that the simple act of kindness that morning had pulled her into a world where loyalty was bought and sold, where trust was a weakness, and where protecting the people you cared about sometimes meant making choices that haunted you forever. All Emma knew as she finally drifted into an uneasy sleep was that she couldn't stop thinking about two babies who deserved better than the hand fate had dealt them, and a broken man who'd been willing to die beside them rather than abandon them. She didn't know it yet, but her life would never be the same. Boston General Hospital, 2:30 p.m. Detective Sarah Morrison had been with Boston PD for 15 years, and in that time she'd developed a sixth sense for when people were lying to her. Marcus Kane was definitely lying. Not about everything. The injuries were real enough, as was his concern for his children, but his explanation for how he'd ended up half-conscious in an alley with two infants and no car in sight, that story had more holes than Swiss cheese. "Let me get this straight," she said, leaning against the wall of his hospital room with her arms crossed. "You were driving home, got a flat tire, pulled into that alley to change it and somehow ended up beaten unconscious while changing a tire." "I told you," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the pain medication that should have made him drowsy. "I was attacked. 3 men, maybe 4. It happened fast. They took my wallet, my watch, everything. Except your children. They were in the car. I'd gotten them out to be safe while I worked on the tire. The attackers ran when they heard sirens." His story was practiced, smooth, almost believable. Almost. "Mr. Kane, I've worked robbery cases for years. Muggers don't beat someone that severely. They want to get in and out fast, grab what they can, and disappear. Someone wanted to hurt you specifically, so I'm going to ask you again. Who did this to you?" Marcus met her gaze steadily. "I don't know, Detective. I wish I could help you more." Sarah sighed, pulling out her card. "If you change your mind or if you remember anything else, call me, day or night, because whoever did this might come back to finish the job, and next time, your kids might not be so lucky." She saw the flicker of fear in his eyes then. Real, unguarded fear. Whatever else Marcus Kane was lying about, his love for those babies was genuine. "I'll be careful," he said quietly. "I promise you that." As Detective Morrison left the room, she nearly collided with a man in an expensive suit carrying a briefcase. He had the polished look of a high-priced lawyer, and his presence only confirmed Sarah's suspicions. This case was far from closed. Marcus Kane had survived the attack, but the real danger was just beginning. Emma Rodriguez had made a promise to a stranger, a promise that would bind her to a world she'd spent her entire life trying to avoid. And somewhere in the shadows of Boston, Victor Castellano sat in his office studying the photo of a young woman with kind eyes and a worn jacket, deciding whether she was a loose end that needed tying up. In 3 days, their worlds would collide again, and this time, there would be no walking away. The dinner rush at Rosie's Diner was in full swing, and Emma moved between tables with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd been doing this work for years. The familiar chaos was almost comforting. The clatter of dishes, the sizzle of burgers on the grill, the constant hum of conversation punctuated by laughter, and the occasional crying child. "Emma, table 6 needs refills," called out Marcus. A different Marcus, the day manager who'd worked at Rosie's for 20 years and knew every regular by name. "On it!" Emma grabbed the coffee pot and wound her way through the crowded restaurant, smiling automatically as she topped off cups and collected empty plates. This was her life. This had always been her life. The strange encounter 3 nights ago in the rain-soaked alley had begun to feel like a dream, something that had happened to someone else, in some other version of Boston. She'd seen the news reports, of course. "Local businessman recovering after apparent robbery" had been the headline, with a brief mention of 2 infants found at the scene, and a good Samaritan who'd called for help. No names, no details. Nothing to connect her to Marcus Kane beyond her statement to the police. Emma had thrown away the business card he'd given her. Or rather, she'd tried to throw it away 3 times, only to fish it back out of the trash each time. It now lived in her wallet, tucked behind her expired community college ID, a reminder of a promise made and a world she wanted nothing to do with. Order up, Emma, booth 12. She collected the plates, meatloaf special, extra gravy, side of green beans, and delivered them to an elderly couple who came in every Thursday like clockwork. They thanked her warmly, and Emma felt that small glow of satisfaction that came from doing her job well, from being part of people's routines and rituals. "Can I get you anything else?" she asked. "Just the check when you have a moment, dear," the woman said with a kind smile. Emma returned to the server station, her feet already aching despite the comfortable shoes she'd invested in last month. She had exactly 90 minutes left on this shift before she needed to catch the bus to her cleaning job downtown. If she timed it right, she could grab a sandwich from the kitchen to eat on the way. "Emma?" Marcus, the manager, caught her attention. "You've got a new table. Booth by the window." She glanced over and felt her heart stop. Marcus Kane sat alone in the corner booth, looking dramatically out of place in his tailored charcoal suit among the diner's usual clientele of construction workers, nurses on break, and families with young children. His face was still marked with healing bruises, a small bandage visible at his hairline, but he sat with the straight-backed posture of someone accustomed to command. Their eyes met across the restaurant, and Emma saw the flicker of recognition in his expression, and something else: determination. Her hands trembled slightly as she grabbed a menu and water glass, forcing herself to walk normally to his table. Every instinct screamed at her to turn around, to tell Marcus, the manager, that she was too busy, to avoid this conversation entirely. "Good evening," she said, her voice professionally neutral as she set down the water. "Can I start you off with something to drink?" "Coffee, please, black." Marcus's voice was quieter than she remembered, more measured. "And I think we need to talk, Emma." "I'm working," she replied, glancing nervously toward the kitchen. "I don't have time to— I'll wait until your shift ends, however long that takes." His tone left no room for argument. "Please, I came to thank you properly, and we have things to discuss." Emma felt trapped between professionalism and the growing sense of dread in her stomach. "I'll get your coffee." She retreated to the server station, her mind racing. She could ask Marcus, the manager, to have him removed, but on what grounds? He was a paying customer sitting quietly in a booth. She could leave through the back door when her shift ended, but something told her that Marcus Kane was not a man who gave up easily, and beneath the anxiety, there was curiosity. Why had he tracked her down? What could they possibly have to discuss? "You okay, honey?" Terry, the evening cook, peered at her through the order window. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," Emma lied, pouring coffee with hands that had finally stopped shaking. "Just tired." The next 90 minutes crawled by with agonizing slowness. Emma worked her other tables while hyper-aware of Marcus's presence in the corner booth. He ordered a burger and fries, barely touched them, and accepted coffee refills with polite nods. He didn't stare at her, didn't try to catch her attention. He simply waited with the patience of someone who had all the time in the world. Other customers came and went. The dinner rush faded into the evening lull. Emma's shift technically ended at 8, but she found herself taking extra time with her closing duties, wiping down already clean tables, refilling salt shakers that didn't need refilling, anything to delay the inevitable conversation. Finally, Marcus, the manager, caught her arm gently. "Emma, go home. You've been here since lunch. Whatever you're avoiding, it'll still be there tomorrow." She nodded, untying her apron with reluctant fingers. There was no more delaying. Marcus Kane was still in his booth, now the only customer in that section. Emma slid into the seat across from him, keeping her jacket on and her purse in her lap, ready to leave at any moment. "How did you find me?" she asked without preamble. "Hospital records," Marcus replied. "You left your contact information with the police. It wasn't difficult to locate your workplace." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I'm sorry if my presence here makes you uncomfortable. That wasn't my intention." "Then what was your intention?" "To thank you. Properly." Marcus reached into his jacket. Emma tensed instinctively and pulled out an envelope. He placed it on the table between them. "You saved my life and the lives of my children. That deserves more than just words." Emma stared at the envelope without touching it. "I don't want your money. It's $50,000. Cash. No strings attached. No questions asked. Just gratitude from a father who almost lost everything that matters to him." $50,000. The number hung in the air between them, simultaneously impossible and tempting. That was more than Emma made in 2 years of her combined jobs. That was enough to pay off her student loans, to put a down payment on the cafe she dreamed of, to send her mother enough money that she could finally retire from the factory work that was destroying her back. That was also, she knew with absolute certainty, money that came from a world she wanted no part of. No, Emma said firmly, pushing the envelope back across the table. I appreciate the gesture, but I can't accept this. I did what anyone would do. Your children needed help, that's all. Marcus studied her with those intense gray-green eyes, and Emma had the uncomfortable feeling he could see straight through to all her secrets, her struggles, her dreams, her desperate financial situation. Not anyone, he said finally. Most people would have kept walking, pretended they didn't hear, didn't see. You stopped. You stayed in the rain with my babies until help arrived. You came to the hospital to check on them even though you were exhausted and soaked through. He leaned forward slightly. You're either incredibly kind or incredibly foolish, Emma Rodriguez. I haven't decided which yet. Maybe both, Emma admitted. But that doesn't change my answer. I don't want money from whatever it is you do. Import-export, Marcus said with a slight smile that didn't reach his eyes. I believe I mentioned that. Right. Import-export. Emma's tone made clear what she thought of that explanation. Look, Mr. Kane. Marcus, she continued. I'm glad you and your children are okay. Truly. But I think it's better if this is goodbye. You go back to your life, I go back to mine, and we both move forward. I wish it were that simple. Marcus's expression turned serious. But I'm afraid you're involved now whether you want to be or not. The people who were responsible for what happened to me, they're watching. They've seen the hospital records, the police reports. They know someone found me and called for help. Emma's blood ran cold. So what? I'm a witness. That's all. You're a connection to me. And in my world, connections can be exploited, can be used as leverage or eliminated as loose ends. He held up a hand as Emma started to protest. I'm not trying to scare you, I'm trying to be honest. You deserve to know the truth about what you walked into. I didn't walk into anything. I found someone who needed help and I called 911. That's where my involvement ends. I thought so too, Marcus said quietly. But 2 days ago, a man was seen taking photographs of this diner. Yesterday, someone followed you from here to your cleaning job downtown. And this morning there was a car parked across from your apartment building for 3 hours. Emma felt the blood drain from her face. You're lying. You're trying to manipulate me into what? Taking money you've already refused? Marcus pulled out his phone and scrolled through several photos, then turned the screen toward her. Look, the images showed exactly what he'd described. A dark sedan parked outside Rosie's. Another photo of Emma leaving the office building where she cleaned. A third, showing her apartment building. The photos were taken from a distance, but they were clear enough to be unmistakable. This is insane, Emma whispered. I'm nobody. I'm a waitress. Why would anyone care about? Because they think you might know something. Or because they think I might care about you, which makes you useful as pressure. Marcus pocketed his phone. I have people watching you now too, keeping you safe. But I can't protect you indefinitely from a distance. Not from them. Emma's mind reeled. 3 days ago, her biggest worry had been whether she could pick up extra shifts to cover an unexpected dental bill. Now she was being told that dangerous people were following her, that she needed protection, that her simple act of kindness had painted a target on her back. What do you want from me? She asked, hating how small her voice sounded. I want you to let me keep you safe. There's a place, secure, comfortable, where you can stay until this situation is resolved. A few weeks at most. You'd have your own space, everything you need. And when it's over, when I've dealt with the people responsible, you can go back to your life, with the $50,000, whether you helped me further or not. You're asking me to just disappear? Leave my jobs, my apartment, my life, temporarily, and I'll make sure your rent is paid, your employers understand you have a family emergency. You won't lose anything. Accept my freedom, Emma said bitterly. Accept my independence. The things I came to this country to have. Marcus was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice carried a weight of understanding that surprised her. I know what it's like to feel trapped by circumstances beyond your control. I know what it's like to have your choices taken away by people with more power. I'm not trying to trap you, Emma. I'm trying to give you the choice to stay safe. And if I refuse, then I'll do my best to protect you from a distance. But I can't guarantee your safety. Not from people who are willing to do whatever it takes to get what they want. He met her eyes. I've lost too much already. I can't have your injury or worse on my conscience. Please. Emma looked around the familiar diner, at the worn red vinyl of the booths, the vintage Coca-Cola signs on the walls, the counter where she'd served thousands of cups of coffee over the years. This place represented stability, routine, the normal life she'd worked so hard to build. But she also remembered the rain-soaked alley, the crying babies, the desperate look in Marcus Kane's eyes as he'd begged her to keep his children safe. She remembered making a promise. If I agree to this, Emma said slowly, I need guarantees. I need to know that this is temporary, that you'll take care of the practical details of my life, and that when it's over, I walk away clean. No debts, no obligations. You have my word. The word of a man involved in... What? What exactly is your business, Marcus? Because I don't think I can make this decision without knowing what I'm getting into. Marcus was silent for a long moment, and Emma could see the internal struggle playing out in his expression. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and measured. My family has been involved in various business enterprises in Boston for 3 generations. Some of those enterprises operate in gray areas of the law. I inherited an organization, a network of people and operations. When my father passed away 5 years ago, I've been trying to transition things toward legitimacy, to build something my children can be proud of someday. He paused. But there are others in my organization who resist change, who prefer the old ways. They saw my wife's death and my vulnerability as an opportunity to take control. So you're... Emma struggled to find the right words. You're an organized crime? I'm a businessman who operates in complicated spaces, Marcus said carefully. I've never personally harmed anyone who didn't pose a direct threat to me or mine. I don't deal in things that destroy lives or communities. But yes, some of what my organization does exists outside traditional legal boundaries. Emma should have stood up right then. Should have walked out and never looked back. Consequences be damned. But she found herself thinking about Sophia and Lucas, innocent babies who had nothing to do with their father's choices, who deserved protection and safety regardless of the complicated world they'd been born into. I need to think, Emma said finally. This is too much to process right now. Of course, but Emma, Marcus's voice turned urgent. Don't take too long. The people watching you won't wait forever to make their move. She nodded, standing on shaky legs. How do I reach you? If I agree to your protection? The number I gave you at the hospital. Do you still have it? Emma thought of the card hidden in her wallet. Yes. Call any time. Someone will answer, and I'll come to you immediately. He stood as well, and Emma was reminded of how tall he was, how he carried himself with an authority that seemed to fill the space around him. Thank you for hearing me out. I know none of this is what you signed up for. No, Emma agreed. It definitely isn't. She left through the back door as she always did into the alley where she'd parked her bicycle. The evening air was cool and damp, carrying the smell of rain that hadn't quite fallen yet. Emma unlocked her bike with trembling hands, her mind spinning with everything Marcus had told her. Organized crime, people watching her, danger she couldn't see or predict. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like her, hardworking, invisible, just trying to survive and maybe save enough to chase a dream someday. But as Emma pedaled toward the bus stop where she'd catch her connection to the cleaning job, she couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on her, couldn't stop herself from glancing over her shoulder at every car that passed, every person who walked too close. By the time she arrived at the office building downtown, her nerves were completely frayed. Downtown Boston, Mercury Financial Tower, 9:30 p.m. The Mercury Financial Tower was a gleaming monument to corporate success. 30 floors of glass and steel housing various businesses, from law firms to investment companies. Emma and her cleaning crew arrived after business hours, when the building was largely empty except for the occasional workaholic pulling late hours. She'd been cleaning offices here for 4 years, working alongside Rosa, Miguel, and Chen, fellow immigrants who'd become something like a second family. They worked in comfortable silence most nights, listening to music through shared earbuds and trading stories during their brief breaks. Tonight, though, Emma couldn't focus. She vacuumed the same section of carpet 3 times before Rosa noticed, and gently steered her toward a different task. Mija, what's wrong? Rosa asked in Spanish, her kind face creased with concern. You've been jumpy as a cat all evening. Just tired, Emma replied, also in Spanish. Haven't been sleeping well. Boy trouble? Rosa asked with a knowing smile. She was in her 50s with grown children and decades of life experience that made her seem wise beyond measure. You have that look. Not exactly. Emma moved to empty a wastebasket. More like, trouble. Before Rosa could press further, the lights in the hallway suddenly went out. Emma froze, her heart immediately racing. The building's lights were on timers, but they were on a schedule. They shouldn't shut off until after midnight, when the cleaning crew was finished. Power outage? Miguel called out from the next office over. Check the breaker? But Emma's instincts, honed by years of staying alert in uncertain neighborhoods, were screaming that something was wrong. The emergency lighting should have kicked on immediately. It hadn't. Everyone stay together, she said quietly, setting down her cleaning supplies. Emma, you're scaring me, Rosa whispered. Just a precaution. Let's head to the elevator. The stairwell door at the end of the hall opened and Emma heard footsteps. Slow, measured footsteps that sounded deliberate rather than hurried. Hello? Chen called out nervously. Security? No response. Just those steady footsteps coming closer. Emma's hand went to her phone, pulling up the contact she'd saved earlier, the number Marcus had given her. She pressed call with shaking fingers, as she gestured for her co-workers to move back toward the offices. This is Elena, a woman's voice answered immediately. Is this Emma? Yes, Emma whispered urgently. I'm at the Mercury Financial Tower downtown 23rd floor. The lights went out and someone's in the stairwell. I don't know if I'm overreacting, but Marcus said, stay exactly where you are. Elena interrupted, her voice crisp and professional. Lock yourself in an office if you can. Security is already on the way. How did you? We've been watching. 2 minutes. Can you hold for 2 minutes? The footsteps were getting closer. Emma could make out the shadow of someone moving down the hallway. Rosa Miguel Chen. Into this office now, Emma hissed, herding her confused co-workers into the nearest unlocked space. She quietly closed the door and turned the lock, then moved everyone away from the door, toward the windows. Emma, what's happening? Miguel demanded in a whisper. Who was that on the phone? Before she could answer, they heard the doorknob rattle. Someone trying the lock. Testing it. Rosa clutched Emma's arm, and Chen pulled out his phone, presumably to call 911. Emma wanted to tell him not to bother, that help was supposedly already coming, but she couldn't find her voice. Terror had locked her throat closed. The doorknob stopped rattling. Footsteps moved away, trying other doors down the hall. Then, like a miracle, Emma heard new voices. Commanding. Authoritative. Building security. Identify yourself. This is private property. You need to leave immediately. There was a commotion in the hallway. Running footsteps, a door slamming, then silence. Long, terrible minutes passed before there was a knock on the office door. Emma Rodriguez? A man's voice, different from the ones she'd heard before. I'm with your security detail. The situation is under control. You can come out. Emma looked at her co-workers' frightened faces and made a decision. She unlocked the door slowly, opening it just enough to peer into the hallway. The lights were back on. 2 men in dark suits stood in the corridor, professional, alert, scanning for threats. One of them approached, showing her an ID card that meant nothing to Emma but looked official enough. I'm David Chen, he said. Mr. Kane sent us to ensure your safety. The individual who was in the building has been escorted out. Building security is reviewing footage now. Who was it? Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Someone who shouldn't have been here. That's all you need to know right now. David's expression softened slightly. Mr. Kane would like to speak with you. He's waiting downstairs. Emma turned to her co-workers who were staring at her with a mixture of confusion and concern. I'm sorry, she said in Spanish. I'm so sorry. I never meant to put any of you in danger. Danger? Emma, what's going on? Rosa demanded. I helped someone a few days ago. Someone I shouldn't have helped, and now... She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Now she was trapped. Now her choices had narrowed to exactly one. Accept Marcus Kane's protection or put everyone around her at risk. Mercury Financial Tower parking garage. 10:15 p.m. Marcus was waiting by a sleek black SUV, his face drawn with worry that transformed into relief when he saw Emma emerge from the building. David Chen and his partner flanked her protectively, while Rosa, Miguel, and Chen followed at a distance, clearly uncertain about what was happening but unwilling to leave Emma alone. Are you hurt? Marcus asked immediately, his hands hovering as if he wanted to check for himself but knew better than to touch her without permission. No. Scared, but not hurt. Emma crossed her arms tightly over her chest. You were right. Someone was there. Someone was looking for me. I know. My people intercepted him before he could reach you. Marcus's jaw tightened. I'm sorry, Emma. I hoped I was being overly cautious. I wanted to be wrong. Well, you weren't. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. From fear, from frustration, from the sheer overwhelming nature of everything that had happened. So I guess I don't really have a choice anymore, do I? There's always a choice, Marcus said gently. But I won't lie to you. Staying exposed right now is dangerous. Not just for you, but for the people around you. His gaze flickered to Emma's co-workers, who were watching from near the garage entrance. They were at risk tonight because of their association with you. That truth hit Emma like a physical blow. Rosa had grandchildren. Miguel was supporting his family back in Guatemala. Chen was here on a work visa, trying to save money for his parents' medical care. None of them deserved to be caught in the crossfire of something they didn't understand. If I come with you now, Emma said slowly, if I accept your protection, they'll be safe, my friends, my co-workers. Yes. Once you're under my protection, there's no reason for anyone to target people connected to you. You're what they want information about. Remove you from circulation, and the interest disappears. Emma looked back at Rosa, Miguel, and Chen one more time. Then she pulled out her phone and typed a quick message in the group chat they all shared. Family emergency back home. Have to leave town for a few weeks. I'm so sorry about tonight. Please be safe. I'll explain everything when I can. It was a lie, or maybe just a different version of the truth. She was protecting her family, the chosen family she'd found here in Boston among fellow immigrants and dreamers. Okay, Emma said, turning back to Marcus. I'll go with you, but I need to stop by my apartment first. I need clothes, my documents, things I can't leave behind. Already taken care of. Marcus gestured, and the SUV's back door opened. Inside, Emma could see 2 small suitcases. I had someone pack essentials for you. If there's anything specific you need, we can retrieve it later. But right now, the safest thing is to leave immediately. You had someone go through my things? Emma felt a flash of anger cut through her fear. You went into my home without permission? I apologize for the invasion of privacy, but time was critical. Marcus's expression remained steady, taking her anger without deflecting. Everything is there. Clothes, toiletries, important documents from your desk drawer, the photo albums from your closet, your laptop. If I overstepped, I'm sorry, but I needed to be prepared for this exact scenario. Emma wanted to argue, wanted to assert some kind of control over a situation that had spiraled completely beyond her grasp. But exhaustion and fear won out over pride. Fine, she said tiredly. Let's just go. Marcus helped her into the SUV, his hand gentle on her elbow, his touch brief and respectful. He climbed in beside her while David Chen took the driver's seat and his partner sat in the passenger seat. The vehicle pulled out of the garage smoothly, merging into Boston's evening traffic. Where are we going? Emma asked. A house in Brookline. It's registered under a shell corporation, completely secure. You'll have your own bedroom, bathroom, everything you need. There's a full kitchen, a library, a garden. It's comfortable. A prison by any other name, Emma muttered. A sanctuary, Marcus corrected gently. I know this feels like you're losing control, but I promise you, Emma, this is temporary, and you're not alone in this. What does that mean? Instead of answering directly, Marcus pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. 2 babies, Sophia and Lucas, sleeping peacefully in matching cribs. They looked bigger than they had in the hospital, healthier and more content. They're at the house, Marcus said quietly. I moved them there 2 days ago when I realized the hospital wasn't secure enough. There's a nurse on staff, Rebecca, who's been helping care for them, but he hesitated, seeming to search for words. They've been fussy, crying a lot. Rebecca thinks they're sensing my stress, the instability. Emma studied the photo, her heart softening despite herself. They're beautiful. They liked you, Marcus said. In the hospital. They were calm when you were there. I thought, if you were there, maybe they'd feel safer. And there it was. The real reason Marcus had been so insistent on protecting her, on bringing her into his secured location. Not just gratitude for saving his life, not just keeping a witness safe, but because somehow in that rain-soaked alley and that brief moment in the hospital, Emma had become associated with safety and comfort for 2 traumatized babies. So, I'm what? Going to be their nanny? Emma asked, not sure if she was offended or touched. You're going to be a guest in my home, Marcus replied firmly. If you want to spend time with Sophia and Lucas, I would be grateful. They need kindness and stability right now, but you're under no obligation. The protection I'm offering isn't conditional on anything except your safety." The SUV wound through Boston streets, heading toward the more affluent neighborhood of Brookline. Emma watched the city pass by through tinted windows, thinking about how quickly life could change. 3 days ago, she'd been a waitress with simple dreams and predictable problems. Now she was being driven to a safe house by a man involved in organized crime, about to live in hiding while dangerous people lost interest in using her as leverage. "Can I ask you something?" Emma said after a long silence. "Anything. Your wife, the mother of the twins. What happened to her?" Marcus's expression shuddered slightly, pain flickering across his features. "Her name was Catherine. She came from a family similar to mine, old Boston money with complicated business ties. Our marriage was partially arranged, but we grew to care for each other. She wanted children desperately." He paused, his voice roughening. "The pregnancy was difficult. Twins often are, but she seemed to recover after the birth. Then 3 months later she collapsed. Blood clot that had been forming slowly, the doctor said. By the time they got her to the hospital, it was too late." "I'm so sorry," Emma said sincerely. "That must have been devastating." "It broke something in me," Marcus admitted. "Made me realize how fragile everything is, how quickly you can lose what matters most. My wife was gone, and suddenly I was a single father to 2 infants, running an organization full of people who saw my grief as weakness." His jaw tightened. "That's when Victor, my former lieutenant, began making his move, suggesting I was too distracted to lead effectively, planting doubts, building alliances. It all culminated 3 nights ago in that alley. And now? Now I'm fighting back. Carefully, strategically, protecting what's mine and dismantling what threatens my family." Marcus turned to look at her directly. "That includes you, Emma. Whether you like it or not, you became part of this story the moment you stopped to help those crying babies. I'm going to make sure it doesn't cost you everything." Emma didn't know how to respond to that, so she simply nodded and turned her attention back to the window. Brookline Safe House, 11 p.m. The house was beautiful in a quiet, understated way. A 3-story Victorian painted in soft gray with white trim, tucked behind a tall fence and mature trees that provided privacy from the street. Lights glowed warmly in the windows, making it look like a home rather than a fortress, though Emma suspected the security was more sophisticated than it appeared. Marcus led her inside, carrying one of her suitcases while David Chen brought the other. The interior was tastefully decorated. Hardwood floors, comfortable furniture that looked actually lived in rather than staged. Family photos on the walls showing Marcus and a beautiful blonde woman at various stages of their relationship. Catherine, Emma realized. The wife he'd lost. "Your room is upstairs," Marcus said, guiding her toward a staircase. "Second door on the left. There's a private bathroom attached. If you need anything, clothes, toiletries, food, just ask. We have staff who can get whatever you need." Emma followed him up the stairs, acutely aware of how strange this all was. This morning she'd woken up in her tiny studio apartment, worried about making rent and picking up extra shifts. Now she was being given a room in what was essentially a mansion, protected by professional security, caught up in a world she didn't understand. The bedroom was lovely, spacious and bright with a large window overlooking the garden, a comfortable-looking bed with soft linens, a sitting area with an armchair and reading lamp. Her suitcases sat at the foot of the bed, and Emma could see someone had also placed fresh towels and a basket of toiletries on the dresser. "The nursery's across the hall," Marcus said, pausing in the doorway. "If you want to meet Rebecca and see how the twins are settling in. But if you'd rather rest, I completely understand. It's been a difficult evening." Emma set down her purse, feeling the weight of exhaustion settling into her bones. But curiosity and that inexplicable connection she'd felt in the hospital pulled her back toward the door. "I'd like to see them," she said. Just for a moment, Marcus's expression softened with something that might have been relief or gratitude. He led her across the hallway to another room where soft light spilled through a partially open door. Inside, the nursery was a peaceful haven of pale yellow walls, white furniture, and gentle decorations. Clouds and stars painted on the ceiling, a mobile of birds hanging over 2 cribs placed side by side. A woman in her 60s sat in a rocking chair, holding a fussy baby and singing softly. She looked up as they entered, her weathered face breaking into a warm smile. "Marcus, you're back," she said with a slight Irish accent. "And you must be Emma. I've heard wonderful things about you. This is Rebecca," Marcus introduced. She's been helping with Sophia and Lucas since they came home from the hospital. They're lovely babies, Rebecca said, standing carefully with the infant in her arms. But this little one has been fighting sleep something fierce tonight. She looked down at the baby. Lucas, Emma thought, recognizing him from the hospital, and shook her head fondly. Nothing seems to settle him. May I? Emma found herself asking, stepping forward with her arms extended. Rebecca handed over the baby without hesitation, and Emma cradled Lucas against her chest the way she'd held his sister in that rainy alley. He was heavier now, more solid, and he smelled of baby soap and milk. His tiny fist grabbed at her shirt as he continued to fuss, his face scrunched up in infant indignation. Shh, pequeño, Emma murmured, swaying gently and humming the same lullaby she'd sung that night. Ya pasó, todo está bien ahora. Remarkably, miraculously, Lucas's crying began to taper off. His body relaxed against hers, his breathing evening out. Within minutes, he was asleep, his rosebud mouth slightly open, his long lashes resting against his cherubic cheeks. Emma looked up to find both Marcus and Rebecca watching her with expressions of wonder. Well, I'll be, Rebecca said softly. I've been trying to get him down for an hour. You have the magic touch, dear. I don't know about magic, Emma said, but she couldn't deny the feeling of rightness that settled over her as she held the sleeping baby. Maybe he just remembers me. Maybe, Marcus said quietly, his eyes suspiciously bright. Or maybe he knows, like I did, that you're someone worth trusting. Emma carefully transferred Lucas to his crib, tucking a light blanket around him and watching for a moment to make sure he stayed asleep. In the neighboring crib, Sophia slumbered peacefully, one tiny hand curled beside her face. Looking at them, these innocent children who'd had no say in the complicated circumstances of their birth, Emma felt something shift in her chest. A sense of purpose, maybe, or just the acknowledgement of a truth she'd been trying to deny. She was already invested in these babies' well-being, had been since that rainy morning when she'd found them crying in an alley. Get some rest, Marcus said as they left the nursery, his voice gentle. Tomorrow we'll talk more about the situation, about what comes next. But for tonight, you're safe. That's all that matters. Emma nodded and retreated to her borrowed room, closing the door and finally allowing herself to feel the full weight of everything that had happened. She sat on the edge of the unfamiliar bed in this unfamiliar house, surrounded by her hastily packed belongings, and let herself cry. For the life she'd carefully built that was now on hold. For the fear she'd felt in that darkened office building. For two motherless babies sleeping across the hall. For the impossible situation she found herself in. And for the strange, complicated man who dragged her into his dangerous world while simultaneously trying to protect her from it. But beneath the tears was something else. Something she was almost afraid to acknowledge. A sense that maybe, just maybe, she'd been meant to walk down that alley 3 nights ago, that her life had been building toward this moment, this choice, this strange new chapter. Emma Rodriguez had come to America with nothing but dreams and determination. She'd survived on her own for 8 years, building a life one day at a time. Now those survival skills would be tested in ways she'd never imagined. But as she finally changed into her pajamas and climbed into the comfortable bed, listening to the sounds of a house settling around her, and the faint whisper of a baby monitor on the nightstand, Emma thought about her mother's words. There are always consequences to kindness. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're difficult. She'd find out which this was, one day at a time. Emma Rodriguez had made her choice, or perhaps the choice had been made for her. In accepting Marcus Kane's protection, she'd stepped fully into a world where loyalty was currency, and trust was a luxury few could afford. Across the city, in a high-rise office, Victor received the news that his target had disappeared into Marcus's protection. The game was far from over. It was only beginning, and neither Emma nor Marcus realized yet how deeply their fates had already become intertwined, or how much they would come to depend on each other in the days ahead. Emma woke to crying babies and found Marcus already in the nursery, looking exhausted as he tried to manage both twins at once. This had become their morning routine, unspoken but comfortable. I'll get Sophia, Emma said, lifting the baby girl naturally. You warm the bottles? Marcus nodded gratefully, and within minutes they sat in rocking chairs, feeding the twins in peaceful silence. Early morning light painted the nursery gold. You don't have to do this, Marcus said quietly. Care for them. That's not why you're here. I know, Emma replied, watching Sophia's contented face. But they need more than professional care. They need someone who sees them as the most important thing in the world. The way you do, Marcus said, something unreadable in his tone. The way any child deserves. Emma found Marcus in Catherine's library, surrounded by his late wife's books. She loved this room, he said softly. Read to the twins before they were born. Pain flickered across his face. They should know their mother. Instead, they have me trying to be both parents while people try to destroy everything. You're doing better than you think, Emma said. The patience, the gentleness, that matters. Marcus looked at her intensely. You're very kind, Emma Rodriguez. Kinder than I deserve. Everyone deserves kindness, she replied. Even complicated men with dangerous pasts. The air between them charged with something unspoken. Marcus reached toward her face, then stopped himself. I should let you read, he said, stepping back quickly. To Maricon PM, the garden. Emma sat on a blanket with the twins, encouraging their tummy time. That's it, Sophia. You're so strong. Lucas rolled to his side, his first real movement, and Emma called excitedly for Marcus. He appeared immediately, loosening his tie as he joined them on the blanket. They spent the afternoon like a real family, laughing at the baby's expressions, sharing lemonade in the sunshine. Tell me about your cafe, Marcus said suddenly. Sophia balanced on his chest. What would it be like? Emma described her dream. A small place where people felt welcome, where they belonged. You make people feel seen, Marcus observed. I noticed that at the diner. Maybe you've been spending time with the wrong people, Emma said. Maybe I have, he agreed, his gaze intense. $30 PM, the kitchen. Emma cooked arroz con pollo while Marcus set the table. The domesticity felt natural, comfortable, too comfortable. Emma, I've been thinking, Marcus said over dinner. I want to help you open your cafe, connect you with resources, remove obstacles. You saved my children. Let me help you build your dream. Emma's breath caught. It was everything she wanted, but accepting felt like crossing an uncrossable line. I need to think about it, she managed. Later, while cleaning up, her phone rang. Unknown number. Emma Rodriguez? I'm Victor Castellano, a smooth voice said. I know you're at Marcus's house. I know you care for his children. That makes you valuable. Emma's blood froze. I can get you out safely, Victor continued. In exchange for small information about Marcus's plans, he destroys everyone close to him. His wife died because of his choices. You're just collateral damage. Emma's hand trembled, but her voice was steady. I don't betray people who trust me. Marcus gave me protection. His children deserve better than being pawns in your game. Don't call again. She ended the call, shaking. Marcus appeared immediately. What's wrong? Emma told him everything. When she finished, he pulled her into a tight embrace. Thank you, he said into her hair. Thank you for choosing to trust me. Emma wrapped her arms around him, feeling his racing heart. This was more than gratitude. This was acknowledgement of something building between them for days. When they pulled apart, Marcus kept his hands on her shoulders. The situation is more complex than I said. Victor's working with federal investigators. Walking away means abandoning loyal people, letting Victor make things worse. How long until it's resolved? Months, maybe. Which means... He trailed off, which meant Emma would be here far longer than promised. Her normal life indefinitely on hold. I need to call my mother, Emma said. After the call, she found Marcus still in his study, exhausted and overwhelmed. I'm not leaving, Emma said firmly when he suggested moving her somewhere safer. Sophia and Lucas need me. You need me. And I need this to feel like I'm making a difference. Marcus knelt beside her chair, his hand finally cupping her face. You're either the bravest or most foolish person I've ever met. Maybe both, Emma smiled, leaning into his touch. I see someone who makes me want to be better, Marcus whispered. Someone I'm falling for, despite every reason not to. I'm scared, Emma admitted, of these feelings, of what happens when temporary becomes more. So am I, Marcus said. But for the first time in months I'm hopeful. Because of you. The security alarm woke Marcus. Someone had breached the perimeter. He rushed to Emma's room. Someone's on the property. Lock yourself in the nursery with the twins. Don't open for anyone but me or David. Emma nodded, moving quickly to the nursery while Marcus went downstairs. But it wasn't an attack. It was federal agents with a warrant. Marcus's lawyer called. RICO investigation. They're making their move. As agents pounded on the door, Marcus looked toward the ceiling where Emma hid with his children. Tell Emma I'm sorry, he told David quietly. And tell her to take care of my children until I can. The door opened. Federal agents flooded in, and upstairs in the locked nursery, Emma held two crying babies, watching through the window as Marcus was led away in handcuffs, her heart breaking for the complicated man she'd fallen for, and the children who needed their father. Everything had changed, and the real test of her courage was only beginning. Emma sat in the nursery at dawn, holding both crying twins. Marcus had been taken into federal custody 3 days ago, and Sophia and Lucas sensed something was terribly wrong. "Shh, pequeños," Emma whispered, exhausted. "I'm here. I've got you." Rebecca appeared in the doorway. "Emma, dear, you need rest. Let me take them." "I promised him," Emma said, tears streaming down her face. "I promised I'd take care of them." Marcus's lawyer, Mr. Harrison, arrived that afternoon with paperwork. "Mr. Kane is cooperating with federal prosecutors. He's providing testimony about the organization in exchange for reduced charges and witness protection for his family." "How long?" Emma asked. 7 to 10 years, possibly less with good behavior. "But Emma," he hesitated, "he's requested that you be given temporary guardianship of Sophia and Lucas, if you're willing." Emma's heart stopped. "Me? But I'm nobody. I have no legal connection to them. You're the person he trusts most in the world, the person his children already love. He's arranged everything: financial support, legal documentation, a trust fund for their care. You'd raise them until his release." Mr. Harrison studied her carefully. "It's an enormous responsibility." Emma looked at the sleeping twins. 7 years, missing their first steps, first words, first days of school, being their mother in every way except biology. "Yes," she whispered, "I'll do it." But 6 months later, Emma stood in the doorway of her new cafe, watching the morning sun illuminate the cheerful yellow walls and small round tables. A sign above the door read, "Sophia's Garden Cafe," in elegant script. Marcus had kept his promise. His legitimate assets had funded everything: the lease, the equipment, the initial inventory. His lawyer had ensured she could manage it while caring for the twins. Rosa and Miguel worked behind the counter, and regular customers already filled half the tables. Emma's dream had come true, though not remotely how she'd imagined. "They're beautiful," a customer said, admiring Sophia and Lucas in their double stroller. At 13 months old, they were walking now, babbling in Spanish and English, thriving despite their father's absence. "Thank you," Emma said, her heart aching with love and loss. Every week she wrote Marcus letters describing the twins' milestones, though she couldn't send them. Witness protection protocols. Mr. Harrison assured her Marcus received updates through official channels, but it wasn't the same. 7 years later, release day. Emma held 7-year-old Sophia's hand as they waited outside the correctional facility. Lucas stood close on her other side, nervous about meeting the father he barely remembered. "Will he recognize us?" Sophia whispered. "Always," Emma promised. "You're part of him." The doors opened. Marcus emerged, older and leaner, but his gray-green eyes were the same. They found Emma immediately, and his face transformed with emotion. Sophia and Lucas hung back shyly, so Emma walked forward alone. "Hi," she said softly, years of longing in that single word. "Emma," Marcus's voice broke. "I saw the photos, read the reports, but seeing you," he looked past her at the children. "They're so big." "They're wonderful," Emma said. "Smart, kind, brave, like their father." Marcus finally tore his gaze from the twins to look at her completely. "Mr. Harrison said you never cashed the guardianship payments, that you used the cafe profits instead. The cafe is doing well. Your money is in trust for their college." 7 years, Marcus said quietly. 7 years you gave them, gave me. How do I ever— "You don't," Emma interrupted gently. "You just come home. We've been waiting." "We?" Hope flickered in his expression. Emma smiled, tears spilling over. "Did you really think I'd wait 7 years just to hand them over and walk away?" Marcus closed the distance between them, cupping her face like he had that night in his study. "I had no right to hope." "Maybe not," Emma agreed. "But I did anyway. We all did." "Daddy?" Sophia's small voice called out tentatively. Marcus turned, dropping to his knees as both children approached cautiously. "Sophia, Lucas, I'm so sorry I've been gone, but I'm here now if you'll let me be." Lucas studied him seriously. "Mama Emma says you're a good man who made mistakes, but you're trying to be better." "Mama Emma is very wise," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. He looked up at Emma. "Mama Emma?" She shrugged, smiling through tears. "It just happened naturally. If that's okay, it's everything." Marcus whispered. Sophia made the first move, launching herself into Marcus's arms. Lucas followed, and Marcus held both children, crying openly for the first time in 7 years. Emma watched her family, built through impossible circumstances, held together by promises and patience and love that had grown despite every obstacle, and thought about the rainy morning that had started everything. She'd saved 3 lives that day, but really, they'd all saved each other. Later, as they walked toward Emma's car, Marcus holding both children's hands looking back at Emma with wonder, she thought about her grandmother's words. Every woman should know how to make a meal that feels like home, no matter where she ends up. Emma had learned to do more than cook. She'd learned to build home from nothing but love and determination. And now, finally, everyone she loved was coming home together. Marcus Kane served 7 years and emerged ready to embrace the legitimate life he'd been building. Emma Rodriguez got her cafe and found her family. Sophia and Lucas grew up knowing that sometimes the strongest bonds are forged in the most unexpected circumstances. And together they proved that redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about building something better from its ashes.